Hi guys, welcome to Bible Breakdown. We're doing Isaiah chapter 7. So the start of this chapter is titled The Message to Ahaz. And I'm going to try and correct myself because I was saying Nazah before. I'm still so embarrassed about that. So sorry about that, y'all. This chapter starts out talking about the king of Israel and the king of Aram, which is Syria. They wanted to go to war with Jerusalem, but they ended up losing. And with that being said, I have some notes just about like the general timeline and like who the people are, etc. So Ahaz, he was considered a terrible king, mostly because he was worshiping other gods. Then we go to the kings of Syria and Israel. So the king of Syria was Rezin, and the king of Israel was Pekah. So from there I wrote in 2 Kings chapter 16, it talks about how Syria and Israel came together to attack Jerusalem. And the reason behind it is because Ahaz came together with the king of Assyria and gave him silver and gold from the Lord's house to repay him for the protection that he put over his people. So that's also in 2 Kings chapter 16 verses 10 to 18. So just continuing, for verse 2 it says, when it became known to the house of David that Aram had occupied Ephraim, the heart of Ahaz and the hearts of his people trembled like trees of a forest shaking in the wind. So Ahaz is king, he hears this news, and him and his people are terrified. They're scared, they're shaking in their boots, whatever you want to call it. They're nervous. So now the Lord's getting involved, and he's telling Isaiah to take his son Shear-Jashub, I hope I'm saying that right, to go with him and go to Ahaz to deliver a message. So the message is in verse 4, and it says, say to him, calm down and be quiet. Don't be afraid or cowardly because of these two smoldering sticks, the fierce anger of Rezin and Aram, the son of Remaliah. And the message from the Lord continues, and he's saying, these people are plotting against you. Their plot is in verse 6. It says, let's go up against Judah, terrorize it, and conquer it for ourselves. Then we will install Tabel's son as king in it. But to respond to that, the Lord reassures them and says, that's not going to happen. It's just not going to pass. So going to the notes that I wrote, the Lord instructs Isaiah to bring his son with him to speak to Ahaz because the meaning of his son's name is symbolic. And the meaning of his name is a remnant will return. So as we know, Ahaz is very shaken. He's not really sure if they're going to come out of this. And the Lord at the end of verse 9 says, if you do not stand firm in your faith, then you will not stand at all. And I wrote for that, God wanted Ahaz to understand he needs to trust him. Ahaz cannot stop his fear because he didn't see the situation the way God did. And that's referencing verse 4 when God is telling him to be calm and be quiet. Also reassuring him not to be afraid because he compares those people to two smothering sticks. I also wrote that God knew they didn't stand a chance because the nations weren't ran by him. They were ran by people that were relying on ungodly things. So going back to that line that I read for verse 9, I wrote, the Lord challenges Ahaz personally. The outcome of the war was already declared when God was like, they're not going to overcome. They're not going to defeat you. Verbatim, he says, it will not happen. It will not occur. So God already spoke on it, so we know that that's what's going to happen. So yeah, the war was already declared, which means that the choice that Ahaz made really affected him personally. So now we move on to the second part of this chapter, and it's titled The Emmanuel Prophecy. So starting at verse 10, the Lord's speaking to Ahaz again, and he's like, ask me for a sign. And Ahaz responds in verse 12. He says, I will not ask, I will not test the Lord. Let's be specific with the words the Lord used. So he says, ask for a sign from the Lord your God. So from that I wrote, Ahaz gets the opportunity to rise to the challenge, and the challenge being basically for Ahaz to pick a side. Is he for God or is he against God? So the Lord gives him a chance to make his choice, but Ahaz refuses because he doesn't want to live by the way of the Lord. And you might think that line that Ahaz says is similar to what Jesus said in Matthew, but there's a distinct difference because their heart posture. Ahaz did not mean it out of respect for the Lord. And in this case, Ahaz is not testing the Lord because the Lord gave him a command. When the Lord commands you to do something, you better do it. So from there in verse 13, it says, Isaiah said, listen, house of David, is it not enough for you to try the patience of man? Will you also try the patience of my God? So it's like, y'all are testing God way more than you test man. which is obviously like not good at all. So you know how the Lord commanded Ahaz to ask for a sign? Well, the Lord just ends up giving him one anyways. And that is when he starts talking about Jesus Christ, and that is from verses 14 and 15. Then you might notice in verse 16, he prophesies the deliverance for Ahaz. At the end of that verse, it says, "The land of the two kings you dread will be abandoned." On the other side of that, though, he's gonna be attacked by Assyria. So that's from verse like 20 to the end. So I wrote that Assyria is coming to attack. Ahaz put a lot of trust in them, and now they'll turn their backs on him, humiliating them the way that they do others. In addition to that, Egypt will also invade, and the attack will cause destruction over all the people of Judah. So yeah, there's a lot that is about to go down, but we will wait and see. With that being said, that is all I have for you guys. I love y'all. God loves y'all more. Have a great night.